Hello and welcome to the third rail. If you follow the channel, you might have seen one or two videos about a temporary layout I'm currently planning to install in order to run my vintage Märklin model trains. Last episode we finalized the track plan. It's now time to get down to business and start laying some tracks, starting with the main lines. So the garage is ready for action, the baseboard has been vacuumed, and everything I need is laid out, ready to be used. I usually make sure I have a few tools, so a transformer connected to a feeder track with a long wire, my lucky shunter, which I always seem to use for when I lay my track, the poor thing, just making sure it works, a track rubber, yes I know, armchair metallurgists, no comment please, a pair of pliers, and my iPad with the track plan. So I usually start laying the track from a good reference point. In this case I'll choose this corner, and then as I go along I use the opportunity to check the condition of the track I'm using. It's a 70 years old track in some cases, and you've got isolating elements for the center contact, for example, onto the track, which are made of plastic, and plastic gets brittle after a while, so it's not uncommon to find some breaks here and there, and these breaks could lead to some shorts. So it's better to discard faulty tracks at this stage of the build instead of spending hours looking for short circuits later down the line. As we are going to be using a block system, I also pay particular attention to my switching tracks and their little lever in the middle of the roadbed. I make sure that it's mechanically in order. If not, I usually spend a bit of time adjusting them at this stage of the build. Once I've laid a section of track, I proceed to test it using my feeder track and my transformer I mentioned earlier. This allows to identify little issues and fix them at this stage. I also test the feeder tracks as I'm laying them to make sure I haven't got a dry solder joint somewhere. This can happen, they're all homemade. In this case that's working fine. And I also test certain sections of track at practically shunting speed, especially where it's critical that I have an excellent contact everywhere. For example, that's a station section where I'm going to have signals and braking sections, so I'd like to make sure that I have no issue in that area. This avoids quite a few troubleshooting steps later on. And I proceed using the same method, section by section, methodically, taking my time. And when I come across an issue, like in this case, loss of current after the turnout, this gives me an opportunity to fix the problem here and then. So in this case we had an issue with a little piece of track which was in rather poor state, and as problems never come alone, the next track also had an issue, but it wasn't difficult to solve. I simply swapped the track, installed it, and once that was done I was back in business and I could send the shunter on its way down that section of track. I then proceeded the same way, section by section, until I was finally, after an hour and a half, 2 hours also at a stage where I had the entirety of the main line at ground level laid and function checked. And here we have an overview of the results, and we are now ready for the next phase, which is the bridge. So we proceed the same way. Having got out all the elements I needed, I laid the pillars and the bridge elements on top of them and worked my way up until I completed the first ramp section. I then proceeded to test it the same way I tested all the other sections at ground level. Again, at a relatively slow speed to be able to identify any track sections or bridge sections with poor connectivity, but everything was fine. So I proceeded to lay the first part of the long bridge section in the center of the layout. Again, no problem with the testing, but it's at that stage that I realized I had a little issue. The clearance between the track and pillar in the two circled sections on the picture was far too narrow. That's not how it should have been according to the plan. So I tried to look for a few obvious things, such as a curved track not set up properly, for example, but couldn't find anything obvious. My problem must therefore have been further up the line, so I decided to carry on laying the bridge until I reached the other end of the layout and then look in that area to see if I hadn't made a mistake earlier on in the build. And as I reached the other end of the layout, my ramp section was far too close to the inner loop, with practically no clearance between the pillars and the inside track. On the plan I should have at least 10 centimeters there. So I compared the plan and the tracks, and I realized I had laid one straight section of track too much at the beginning of the build before the entrance to the first station. As a result, the entire top section of the layout got shifted to the left by 20 centimeters, and this introduced the little clearance issues that I had noticed when installing the bridge. I also found myself in a situation, as you can see on the plan, where the ramp section at the end of the bridge didn't meet the elevated section. So I had to remove this additional piece of track and shift things back a bit by 20 centimeters, and everything was back where it should have been in first place. I then still had a small fit issue under one of the bridges, and that was due to a classic that all Märklinists will recognize. I had a 5-6 piece of track, which is a radius 2 curved track meant to compensate with radius 2 turnouts. It looks very similar to a 5100, which is a radius 1 piece of track, and one of these 526s had found its way into a box full of 5100s, so I didn't notice it was the wrong one. So I swapped this as well. And after correcting these mistakes and shifting a few things back and forth a bit, my main lines, including the elevated sections, were finally completed. So before doing anything else, it's time to do a first function test of the entire loop, and also perform a few clearance checks with a few consists. So after a quick tidy up, we're ready to send the little shunter on a first ever trip around the layout. So it's on its way towards the second radius curve, leading to the first station. entering the first station, going along the track nicely, nothing to report so far. Exiting the station towards the second radius curve and entering the inner loop, which will reverse the shunter so that it can enter the second station in the other direction. In that section we've got a bit of jitter, but I haven't connected all the power feeds at that stage, so that will most certainly be fixed once I connect the rest of the power feeds. We are exiting a first radius curve to get into the second station. No problem there as well, and we're entering the ramp towards the elevated section. Excellent. It's climbing with no particular issue. There's a pillar here and there which needs adjusting a bit, which are a bit skewy, but apart from that, nothing to report. There we go. Successful first trip round the layout. Now we need to test the clearance, so let's set up a consist of 24 centimeter coaches, which is the size of the majority of the coaches I've got in the collection. We'll simply reuse the consist we used for the RAM tests in a previous episode, and we can see that the consist is going under the bridge nicely. Nothing catches on the way, so that's good. It's also negotiating the curve properly. We'll now go the other side and see if the consist will go under the bridge. Yep, that's fine. And the inner curve towards the station is also okay. So now let's look at the performance on the ramp. Slowing down a bit, but it's okay, that's normal. And picking up speed on the bridge. But so far so good, no problem. Going downhill now, it's picking up speed. Yeah, no problem at all. Excellent. Now I also have 27 centimeter coaches in the collection, so let's have a go with a few of those. So I'm not worried about that part of the layout. Let's have a look at the clearance under the bridge. That's fine, going in that direction. The next bridge shouldn't cause any problem. Yes, that's fine as well. Now the other direction, this one was fine, and the other one is fine as well. Perfect. Now let's have a look at the bridge section. Everything's fine on that side, but at that turn the coaches catch against the side of the trellis bridge. The longer coaches are swaying a bit too much towards the outside and get caught on the way. Not too much of a problem. We'll just swap the bridge section with one with no sides, and we should be back in business. Let's have a look. So the bridge is okay. Now after the turn we're fine as well. Perfect. Well, after this good start, I think we're ready for the next stage, which is going to be electrics, signals and block system. But I think that's a topic for the next episode. So for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. I'd also like to thank all the recent subscribers to the channel. It's very nice to see that people are interested in what I produce, and so much so that they subscribe and click the little notification bell to get notified of any new updates on the channel. It's very rewarding and keeps me going. Thank you very much again. For now, bye and see you next time.